For those that say, "Oh, but Pierre, he's different, I swear," I wrote this poem, and for you, I'll share. Pierre, Pierre, when it's popular, you're there. But when it's unpopular, you're where? You're neither here nor there, your presence is scarce. When it comes to freedom or integrity, I don't think he cares. Either quiet or gone when it comes to segregation, coercion, and people losing jobs across the nation. Are they the opposition party or the submission party? I think they got the words mixed up. Or perhaps they are controlled, compromised to keep the agenda fixed up. Preaching logic and trying to sound smart, I thought you'd at least bring up immunity from previous natural infection. But nope, he's got to shut up. Nothing counter-narrative before or after the elections. Science on masks, risks for children, and the coerced mass experiment. These topics too taboo. Even as a parent, his conviction has no virulence. Take a stand, take a position, make it a mission to actually be the opposition. Instead, when it comes to freedom, it's been the omission and the transition to the demolition of our Constitution. Pierre, it's a mystery how with the most abusive government in Canadian history, for 2 years you've been silent to measures bringing misery and injury. So where, oh where, is Pierre? When it comes to freedom, I can't find him anywhere. Is he here? Is he there? We've looked everywhere. Oh, here he is. He's here. He's here. He followed the truckers here. Followed. Because he's not a leader, that's clear. There are 0 federal MPs worth showing respect. They've all cowered in fright for the Great Reset. But now when the people rise together, these fakes come out to help fight the oppressors. Better late than never, I guess, but the bottom line, don't trust career politicians. So I have to say, folks, anyone who has been silent as far as leaders go, I'm not talking about family members, friends, anyone who has been silent over the last 2 years, who is in a position of influence, leadership, this could be a celebrity, this could be a medical health expert or any kind of government official, and definitely politicians. Anyone who has been silent for these past 21 months and is only starting to speak up now is not to be trusted. It doesn't matter if it's because they're corrupt, compromised, or simply a coward. Either way, they aren't doing their job. Their job is to protect our fundamental freedoms. That's the primary, folks. Yes, there's other agendas that politicians will have and other promises that, obligations that they make to their constituents. But the number one thing, the entire reason a government exists, is to protect our fundamental freedoms. We have to remember that a government exists because people accepted the notion that we would allow a monopoly of force to protect our individual rights. Our individual rights are things such as our private property, your person, and your pursuit of happiness. And all 3 of those things depend on the other. You can't enjoy your private property if someone can just hurt you physically. You can't have a pursuit of happiness or make decisions and choices for your future if someone can just hurt you physically. What you do right now and the choices you make mean very little if you can't keep the fruits of your efforts, which would be your private property. And if people keep you from making choices in the future, then what good is it to have ownership of anything, of your private property, including your person, if people can tell you what you can and cannot do? Do you understand how they're all related? These can also be thought of as your past, your present, and your future. Your past is your private property, your present is your person, and your future are the choices that you make. It's the choices you make. So the government's primary role is to protect your past, present, and future, your private property, your person, and your pursuit of happiness. And if the government is overstepping any of those boundaries, if it is attacking your private property, we have to question it. Our politicians have to speak up. If they are attacking your body, your bodily autonomy, for example, our politicians have to speak up. If they are attacking your ability to make choices as to what you want to do with your life, say such as traveling, your politicians must speak up. That is the whole reason, the premise for why we accept a monopoly of force such as a government to exist. And we need to understand this. And for 21 months, we have had everyone, pretty much everyone in the House of Commons has been silent. Silent. It's not until this trucker convoys come around that people are starting to speak up. It's not until it's popular. Pierre, when it's popular, you're there. But when it's unpopular, you're where? Where were you for the last 21 months? How many people were forced to close their businesses, not allowed to use their own private property, their businesses? How many people lost their jobs or were forced to lose their jobs where you didn't speak up? And I'm speaking to all politicians, not just Pierre. Okay, I'm speaking to everyone. Why didn't any of them speak up? Are you compromised? Are you corrupt? Are you simply a coward? Do you lack integrity? What is it? Are you so easily controlled? And I have to be fair at some point, because we shouldn't always just focus on the puppets. We should also focus on who is pulling the strings. Who is pulling the puppet strings is a whole other question. And that opens the door to the conversations about corruption and politicians being compromised. We know that Klaus Schwab bragged about having more than half of Trudeau's cabinet as being on board with the Great Reset. We know that. He said it. He bragged it. He's so proud of Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau has said he wants to use this pandemic as an opportunity to push the pre-pandemic agenda for 2030. Our government of Canada, Canada.ca, put out its own Agenda 2030 document. It's a 45-page document. You can download the PDF. Just go on DuckDuckGo, type in Canada Agenda 2030. Scroll down a little bit and you can download the PDF. This is very important. Our Minister of Finance, Chrystia Freeland, is a board member of the World Economic Forum. People need to understand that the World Economic Forum is the head for the Great Reset. They wrote the Great Reset. The director, Klaus Schwab, wrote the book, The Great Reset. He wrote the book, The COVID-19 Reset. They run Davos, right? They've written Agenda 2030, Agenda 21, Agenda 2050. People think the New World Order is some kind of conspiracy, but you can look at JFK talking about secret societies in the New World Order, and George Bush Sr. talked about it in the 90s. This is not a secret, guys. It's not even overt. It's blatant. And our politicians are all in on it. And whether you like to think it or not, every single politician that didn't speak up for some reason, because I don't know if they're all corrupt or compromised or if they're just cowards afraid to speak up. I don't know which one it is. Or if they're that incompetent. I don't know. But they didn't. That's the bottom line. Every single one of them needs to go. And people have to realize this. So when people see the Conservative Party standing up, they see them standing up right now after it's a fad. You really have to wonder what is going on. Because anyone who doesn't have a short memory and has watched the last 21 months go by and looked at what politicians have done or not done, how silent they've been, and anyone who pays attention to the agenda that is, as I said, it's blatantly overt, anyone who's paid attention to these things knows what's going on, and they see that what we have is we have a movement that is so big. It is uniting so many Canadians across the entire country. This isn't a fringe minority. I know they like to say that, but we see every single truck going, every overpass has hundreds, if not thousands of people holding signs, while hundreds and hundreds of trucks and thousands of vehicles are driving by, from British Columbia all the way to Ontario. They had to barricade all of these trucks outside of the city. I don't think people in Ottawa even realize that the majority of trucks are not downtown. Some of the trucks even stopped coming so they could start barricading or blocking borders across Canada. But they aren't all there. What we see is just a very, very small percentage. So this fringe minority is huge. And what we have is a movement full of Canadians that want freedom, and they're sick of these draconian measures, and they're speaking up. And they can't let that movement of freedom-loving people be taken over by a strong opposition that will actually fight this agenda. So this Conservative Party that has been quiet this whole time, they're trying to get in there, get their paws in there so they can help direct the group. So that people will think, oh, the Conservative Party is finally coming around. And they might change their leader. They're going to change their leader. He's been voted down, so we're going to find a new leader. And when this new leader comes, all of a sudden, they're going to be the party to go with. All of those MPs who were silent, they couldn't defy their leader, their most agreeable leader in history. They couldn't stand up to him. They couldn't pose any questions. They couldn't speak up in the media. They couldn't just get on their own social media and, share their own opinions if they disagreed with this and actually had conservative values like protecting people's individual rights. But no, none of them did. So you think that all these people who were silent, scared, conformists to their party are all of a sudden going to be these great leaders and speak up and change tune with a different leader? Either way, that's conformists. We want politicians that are moralists, principled. Do you understand that? A person who runs off of morals does what's right and stands up for what is right regardless of what everyone else is doing. That is character. A person that is a conformist does whatever everyone else is doing regardless of what is right or wrong. So which one are all of these politicians who have been silent this whole time? Are they moralists? No, clearly not. They're all conformists. They're all party politicians and careerists. That is a scary thing. When you have someone who cares more about being a politician than someone who is a politician because they want to impact the country. They want to affect change. They want to make Canadians' lives better. Can you honestly say that any politician in the Conservative Party suits that, knowing that they have been silent this whole time? Really? How many lockdowns have we had? How many businesses have gone out? This is something we really have to think about. And anyone who thinks that all of a sudden the Conservatives are going to change tune, it's crazy. But the thing is, no one in the freedom movement thinks that. Everyone in the freedom movement is not short-memoried. They're not, what's her name, Nora or Dora from Nemo, right? They know what's going on. They can watch history and see how this has played out over the last 2 years. And they can see the trajectory of what will happen if these people stay in power. These people, Don Cherry, those people. So what we really have to consider is, why on earth would anyone vote for the Conservatives again? I don't think anyone will. I think the only people that will vote for them are the people who think they're conservatives, but don't don't understand the role that the Conservative Party has been playing as the least oppositional opposition in the history of Canadian politics. We have had the most authoritative, most overreaching government in history. When you think about the amount of rights and freedoms that have been attacked, the attack on our Constitution, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, our Bill of Rights. Okay, these two documents have just been under siege for the last 2 years. And then we've had the least oppositional opposition in history. The leader of the Conservative Party is more concerned with trying to grow in a way that is trying to get liberals who don't like Trudeau and trying to hold on to conservatives, instead of simply doubling down on conservative values. Conservatives should be principled, holding on to their principles, doubling down on it, educating people about it, talking about their principles. Kind of like Ron Paul. I absolutely love Ron Paul because anyone who listens to Ron Paul learns why he has such an opinion. You don't debate Ron Paul. Like, watch any of his debates. You don't debate him. He teaches you. He teaches the people he debates because they all have these party politic lines that they're trying to toe, and he just has principles. And he can defend his principles. And that's what a politician should be like. Instead, right now, we have so many bad politicians. Excuse me, COVID. We have so many bad politicians. They are all so terrible that a politician who is simply more like what a standard politician should be is put on a pedestal. I see people respecting Pierre as if he's the next great politician because he stands up against Trudeau. You guys realize that it's the most financially irresponsible government in history, like the amount of money that has been printed and everything that they've done. Someone has to stand up to that. He did his job. He did his job. He did a good job. I'm giving him that. He did good. He did a good job. But that's what he's supposed to do. That's the standard. Yes, he's articulate. He speaks very well. I admire all of it. That's the standard. The standard of what a good politician should be, what a decent politician should be. And then the next standard is, are they principled and do they stand up for their principles consistently? That's the one where he fails in my eyes. But all of these politicians are so terrible that basic politicians, Leslyn Lewis, Candice Bergen, Pierre Poilievre, they're decent. I don't hate them completely, but they aren't nearly as good as they should be. They're just the standard. What we have is a few politicians which are really like lettuce on a turd sandwich. The rest is so bad that lettuce looks great. Think about that. We don't have any outstanding politicians. Politicians are supposed to be articulate. Politicians are supposed to be able to speak against the most basic things. And that's one of the problems. So we watch videos I'm going to pull up this video. And we watch a video like Pierre speaking in the House of Commons. And what he says is good. It's all correct. But it's basic. And you'll see what I mean.
Just because the Prime Minister dressed up in racist costumes so many times he can't remember them all doesn't mean every single Liberal is a racist. Just because the Prime Minister had tried to help a corporation avoid prosecution after it stole from some of Africa's poorest people doesn't mean all Liberals are racist. Just because about a half dozen Liberal MPs who are racial minorities have complained about his treatment of them does not mean that all Liberals are racist. That is guilt by association. Why doesn't the Prime Minister opt instead for personal responsibility?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
That's great. Everything he says I agree with, right? You can all agree with that. If you have a protest with 100,000 people and you have a couple bad actors, that doesn't mean 100,000 people are bad. Obviously. This is common sense. It's just that Trudeau and the Liberals are so crazy that they're trying to push that propaganda that someone has to speak up and say this. But we could teach this concept to a 4-year-old. The problem is that is how far gone our politicians have taken politics, have taken the media, that these kind of conversations have to have in the House of Commons. I'm more insulted that the people who are representing us like have to waste time talking like that. That is basic stuff. We literally teach that to kids in elementary school. Just because one person is a certain way, you don't put that on everyone in the group. Remember stereotyping? Yeah, we don't do that. This isn't news. And yet our elite, our representatives, the people who are supposed to be our great minds and think for us and represent us, that's what they're spending their time talking about. That's insulting. And yet they stood up for this. When did they do that? The trucker convoy? They did that at the trucker convoy. They didn't do that a week and a half or 2 weeks prior. There should have been something huge in the House of Commons after Justin Trudeau said this on television. We are going to end this pandemic by proceeding with the vaccination. There is still a part of the population fiercely against it. They don't believe in science or progress and are very often misogynistic and racist. They take up some space. This leads us as a leader and as a country to make a choice. Do we tolerate these people? That was said by the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, on December 29th, 2021, on television. How is that type of genocidal talk not exploding the House of Commons? How did that not erupt in the House of Commons? That should be everywhere. That should be all over the news as a negative thing. I saw it shared on some news channels, them talking about that, but they didn't even say it was a bad thing. They just shared that he said it, almost as if they agreed with it. Take up space. They take up some space. This leads us as a leader and as a country to make a choice. Do we tolerate these people? Tolerate? He's literally dehumanizing an entire demographic of Canadians. Did they speak up then with that much passion in the House of Commons? They didn't. They didn't at all. Leaders are supposed to lead. They aren't supposed to follow. I mean, look up the definition of what a leader is. A leader isn't someone who does something after the group does a bunch of things. Just like I was talking about the moralists and the conformists. Leaders lead. Why isn't anyone leading? Why aren't any of these politicians speaking up? How is this not bothering anyone? We need a complete overhaul of our political system, of everyone in it, and we need to question the system. So we need an overhaul of all of the members. We need to start questioning all of them, and we need to start questioning how this system operates, because they are not looking out for our interest. If we look at what has happened over the last 21 months, the whole purpose is to have a responsible government. Responsible, a lot of people, when they hear the term responsible government, they often think that responsible is referring to financially responsible. That's not what a responsible government is about. A responsible government is about making sure that the government takes responsibility for its decisions. You know, when sometimes you get excited or emotional about something, it doesn't matter if you're super happy and excited to do something, or if you're angry or you're sad. Often we can make, certain decisions that may be unwise. They may be a little bit myopic. We're not thinking of other consequences that could happen as a result of these actions. And sometimes we need that friend to just talk some sense into us. That's what a responsible government is. When I say this has been the most, the When I say this has been an opposition that has opposed the least, that's also like saying this is the most irresponsible government. Even if you agree, and I love doing this with my friends, often we'll have conversations that are pretty deep, and I'll say things like, I agree with you, but I want to play devil's advocate on this to make sure we're not missing anything. So let's just go with this. And you ask questions, you make challenges. Sometimes it's fun to argue the other side. You can really learn other people. You can learn how to steelman other people's arguments, how to represent their opinions, the basis for their opinions better than those people themselves often, if you really practice playing devil's advocate with your friends, right? It's like intellectual weightlifting, I guess you could say. But so for a responsible government, you need a strong opposition. You need an opposition that is going to challenge all of the decisions that the government is making. Ask questions, challenge them. So we have had the most irresponsible government, or irresponsible opposition in history, the most irresponsible government. And what can we do to make this better? Well, the first place we start is we look at the people. So I say we look at the system, we look at the people. And when we look at the people, here's a challenge. And I said this when I ran in the federal elections. I put a video out talking about this because I realized the majority of people don't even know their own MPs. They don't know their own representatives. Everyone, I don't care where in the world you live, think of the people that represent you. One, do you even know their name? Can you spell their name? Some people might know, like, oh yeah, I think I know their last name, or maybe their first name's this, but do you know their full name? Like, could you write it down on a piece of paper? And name a couple things that they've done for you, good or bad. Literally, good or bad. What has this person done? Have they passed any bills? Have they even like given a speech somewhere that you agree with? What have they done that you agree with? And if the next election comes around and you think of your incumbent and you can't think of anything that you like that person has done for you that aligns with your values, you know that person has to go. Absolutely, that person has to go, without question. That person gets paid to represent you. So if they aren't representing you, and they get paid with your tax dollars, so, more precisely, you pay them to represent you. So if you can't think of anything that they've done to represent you, then you know that they are doing a terrible job and you need to hire someone else. You need to vote for someone else. That's all that it is. Very simple, right? So we have to look at all of our politicians in power and we have to question these things. Why were they silent for 21 months when they were putting all of these draconian measures on us? What is going on? And even the language that they use is a whole other thing. How are they representing us? Are they really representing our opinions? I saw this one by Aaron O'Toole, and it said that he is calling for shot clinics along trucking routes and educational programs. So he is asking for educational programs for truckers to better address vaccine hesitancy. So I'm going to tell you something right now. I just said that the standard of politicians is so low that we accept crap. Politicians should be political philosophers. They should have a strong foundation for the ideas, the principles, the values that they have. And they should be standing by them. So when they let this sort of manipulation happen to the language, this vaccine hesitancy idea, when we should be talking about informed consent, when we should be talking about bodily autonomy, when they should be bringing up things like immunity from previous natural infection, yet they have all been silent. I can't stress this anymore. They have all been silent and allowed this manipulation of language, which they should be intelligent enough to see. And it is a shame that the quality of politicians that we have right now do not recognize this manipulation of language. Or they do recognize it and they are cowards, they are compromised, or they are, corrupted. Which one is it? This is something we really, really need. I can't stress how much we need to hammer this home because there is a great agenda that is going on to Canadians. And if many people continue with any of these two main parties, we know where it's going to go. You think the Conservative Party isn't going to still push in the digital ID, the digital currency? Supply chains are going. It's happening. Inflation, it's going. We'll see what happens to the currency, and they're going to push these digital IDs. They're going to push these digital currencies. And then we'll see. Who knows when the social credit system is going to come in? We have to have politicians who are talking about these things, bringing them up. We have to have politicians who are saying, hey, our prime minister said that he admires China's dictatorship. He admires global Marxism. We can't deny that Canada has a document called the Agenda 2030. It has its own document now, folks. You can read it. And when you read it, you will notice that the whole thing reads similar to any of Justin Trudeau's answers anytime he's questioned. Speaking of that, let's look at Aaron O'Toole trying to answer whether he supports the truckers or not, because he can't answer it. He answers it just like
tweeted out
Justin Trudeau. It's hilarious.
Convoy. One of them saying that he felt the Prime Minister had a vendetta against people who were unvaccinated. Do you support the convoy, its goals, its objectives, even though the Canadian Trucking Alliance says this could be disruptive? And to follow, again, repeat Louis' question, will you meet with them when they come to Ottawa?
We've been talking to the Canadian Truckers Alliance, Glenn, for several months. We've seen a crisis in the supply chain coming for several months, and we've proposed policies to try and help alleviate that. The most important of which is vaccines. And we encourage everyone to get vaccinated and to get boosted. And how can we use those tools alongside the other tools to make sure that we don't see shortages on grocery store shelves? Because here's the reality. When there's a shortage of products, the costs go up. And Canadians are already 60% worried about paying their grocery bill. So we can't have policies that make that even worse, and we can't raise taxes. So that's what we've been advocating for responsibly the last few months, Glenn, is to try and tackle the supply chain crisis, encourage vaccination, not ignore problems and divide the country like Mr. Trudeau does.
You didn't answer my question about
yes, I did, Glenn.
You didn't say whether you
are a critical tool.
You didn't say whether you meet with them.
And we need
you didn't say what,
to make sure we keep store shelves full.
Maybe you can answer in response to my next question, sir. You can say whether you meet with them.
That's why last week, Glenn, when the policy of the federal government for less than 24 hours,
he didn't even. Do you support? Do you support the convoy, and do you support what they're hoping to achieve? And he couldn't answer it. It's just like with this other one, O'Toole won't oppose the vax tax, but he won't say he opposes it. Listen to this.
Well, as I said last week, I don't support this type of approach. I can understand why there is some frustration out there in the fifth wave of the pandemic, but we have to work together. We have to also make sure that we don't unfairly target people or use our healthcare system in a way that doesn't accord with how we've always done it. I will respect the provinces making the best decisions from their perspective to fight COVID-19. I think we need a prime minister that doesn't cause fights with the premiers, but tries to bring them together.
So we're talking about a responsible government. You need opposition. And what we have here is we have the opposition who isn't willing to oppose, who isn't willing to say that, yes, we have to challenge. We need a government that has people playing devil's advocate on one another. We have to work together. Yes, we have to work together, but we also need to not be afraid to say you oppose something. A vax tax? Really? You're not going to outright just say you oppose it? I don't know what's going on. So we see this as well. So I'm talking about timing. So Pierre's coming out. He's saying all the right things lately. And like I've said before, he's a very good speaker. He's very articulate, good sounding voice, sharp, concise, clear, great speaker. And where does he get his words from?
If you got it
A truck brought it to you.
Oh, sorry, that wasn't Pierre. That was Al Pacino in The Irishman playing Jimmy Hoffa. Sorry, wrong video.
If you walk into a grocery store and you see products on the shelves, thank a trucker.
Cool. Great. Sounds awesome. Great sound bite. Speaking up finally. I got a question. Very simple question. And you have to be honest with me right now. Be so honest, please. Try not to dance around. Given that he has been silent for the last 21 months, while thousands and thousands of Canadians have lost their jobs, thousands and thousands of businesses have closed permanently, okay? And he didn't say anything. He didn't speak up for anything. And I'm not even saying he has to speak up in the House of Commons. He could have just spoken up with a petition or spoken up with a video, a tweet, something, just to show some disdain and to kind of push the issue and get the conversations happening between Canadians and other MPs and MPPs. But he didn't. So he didn't for 21 months. So if this trucker convoy was not happening, would Pierre be talking about freedom right now, the last couple weeks? Would he be talking about freedom? Yes or no? I think we all know the answer. You guys get where all this is going? You guys, I'm sorry to keep repeating myself, but I think we all know what's going on. And the CPC is a joke. It's drowning. Their only hope is being accepted by people who are sitting on the fence and think that they love freedom, think that they might have conservative values, but have not been paying attention for the last 2 years and only watch TV. That's where their source of information is. So please share this video with those types of people so that they understand that they need to start searching for people who have been speaking up for freedom this whole time, consistently. There's only a handful of MPPs and MPs and politicians that have spoken up consistently over this entire pandemic. I'm not even going to say them because I want you to look for them. I want you to look them up to see if you come across the same ones, because there's only a few. We need to contemplate, what do we want this country to look like, and who are the types of people that will take us there? This fringe minority stuff is BS. They set this whole pandemic up around a concept of we're all in this together. We're all in this together, so stay home. We're all in this together. Put on a mask. We're all in this together. Go get the jab. We're all in this together. Close your business. We're all in this together. Keep your kids home. And some people bought it. We're all in this together to take abuse. But I've gone to this convoy every single day since it started. And that is, we're all in this together. That is community. That is compassion. That is conviction. That is courage. That is, we're all in this together. That is the difference between someone saying we're all in this together based upon fear versus thousands and thousands and thousands of people saying we're all in this together based off of a love for freedom.